Hello there. I'm Emily Rose, one of the program managers for Codenation, and today we're going to be walking through 8.1, where we'll be talking about basic conditionals. So we're going to start, as we always do, with our do now. Before you pause to look at it, let's take a look together. So what you're trying to do is figure out the password. Yeah. And when it says guess the password, doesn't actually mean guess. You want to look in the code and see if you can figure it out. And if you do, then you want to see if you can change the password in the code. So you'll want to give yourself 3 minutes on a timer, pause this video now, and then unpause when you're ready to move on. Awesome, we're back. So let's talk through this do now really quickly. So we see that there's a variable here created called password, and we've set that variable equal to whatever the user puts in the password input field over here. Yeah, and we did this with input.val, which we learned previously. So we've said, all right, password variable is equal to whatever the user puts in here. If password equals LeBron James, then we're going to show yes, and we're going to hide denied. Otherwise, we're going to show denied and hide yes. So we know that we show yes when the password equals LeBron James. So the password must be LeBron James. And if you wanted to change it, you would change it to wombats are great, whatever password you want. Cool? So let's talk more about conditional statements. Coders will create basic conditional statements, as we just talked about. The vocabulary for today is conditional statements, if statement, else statement, and operators. You may have heard about operators in your math class. So some examples of conditional statements. If it's raining outside, you bring an umbrella. Else, otherwise, you wear sunglasses. Yeah. So depending on the conditions, right, in this case, weather conditions, you're going to make a different decision. Here's another example from the before times. Or maybe you're traveling to school now. Wow, welcome to the future. If your travel time is greater than 1 hour, you read a book because you have all the time in the world. Else, if it's not greater than 1 hour, you're just going to listen to music. Yeah, again, 2 different outcomes based on the conditions. In this case, how long it takes you to get to school. So conditional statements. Sometimes we want to perform different actions like we just talked about, depending on the situation. An example from the internet is if your password is correct, the website will let you log in. Else, if it's not correct, it's going to give you an error that says incorrect password. Yeah. So programmers use conditional statements to make different things happen based on different situations in websites or apps, just like we use them in the real world. So we're going to look at some examples here, and we'll talk about what's changing based on the conditions. So we're going to start with what we just talked about. Yeah. So here, if the password is correct, you get to move on into that website. If the password is not correct, you're going to get this error that says the password you've entered is incorrect. Yeah. So that's one example. Another example is registering to vote. So you have to fill out all these different fields. And then in order to register to vote, you have to check this box that says, I am a US citizen. So if the box is checked, you'll be able to submit your application to vote, yeah, your registration form. If that box is not checked, you will not be able to submit this form. So that's another example. And last one, credit card information. Yeah. So you've got lots of different fields here that all probably have conditions. So even though this seems really simple, there are probably lots of conditions in the back end. So let's talk through some of those. In that first field where it says card number, right? Card numbers are a certain number of digits long. So you've got the condition, let's say if it's 16 digits, great, you can move forward. If it is not 16 digits, it's going to say, this isn't a real credit card number. It's too many numbers long, or it's not enough numbers long. Yeah. Card numbers also start with 3, 4, 5, or 6 for the different card issuers, right? So if your credit card number starts with 9, then this field is going to say, warning, that's not a correct credit card number. Yes, you've got a couple conditions in that field. Then when you move on to your expiration date, again, expiration date probably can't be in the past because it'll know it's an expired card. So that's one condition. It has to be in the future. Probably has to be 2 digits for the month and 2 digits for the year. So that's another condition. If you don't put it in the right way, it's going to say, oh, this isn't a valid expiration date. And then your security code. Your security code will be a certain number of digits long, depending which card issuer you work with. So if you have a Visa or a MasterCard, it might be different. So the conditionals here are if the security code is 3 to 5 digits long, let's say, then you can move forward. If not, it's probably not a real security code and it's not going to let you pass. So those are just some of the conditions that are probably present here, even though it looks like a really simple field. But it's also good to know that things like basic conditional statements are used everywhere on the internet. So you're learning a powerful tool. All right, so if else statements, we're going to talk about how to set these up. Yeah. If the condition is true, then the program executes one certain block of code here where it ends in B. Else, if the condition is false, then the program will execute a different block of code. So you can see that where it says C. Yeah. So let's talk really quickly about true, false. When we talk about conditions being true or false, we don't mean that they are true in the real world. So take, for example, the citizenship question, right? I might forget to check that citizenship box and it will evaluate to false. That doesn't mean I'm not a citizen. It doesn't mean false that I'm a citizen. What it means is I didn't meet the condition. So true or false just means, did you meet the condition that the programmer put in the code? Yeah. So we might have a question about what color is your hair? And the answer in the code is you have to put in blue in that box. Well, my hair's not blue, but the condition is still met if I put blue in the box. Yeah. So it's not about, is it true or false in the real world? True or false means, did it meet the condition that the programmer put in the code? That's true. If it didn't, that's false. Yeah. So let's look more at this. So this is what the syntax looks like. This is how you would write it in your code. If condition, the condition goes between those two parentheses, then code. You can see on line 2, code goes here. Else, right, if it doesn't meet the condition, code goes on line 4. So if condition, some sort of code will run. Else, some other sort of code will run. That's the basic framework. So here's an example written just like we just looked at. Yeah. So we have let number equal 5. Yeah. So we have if, we start with if. We have our condition between the two parentheses. So in this case, our condition is number is less than 10. Then between those curly brackets, the code that will run if the condition is met. Yeah, if it's true. Else, we see after the first set of curly brackets, and we start a new set of curly brackets for whatever code we want to run if the condition is false. Yeah? So let's look at this specific example again. The condition, as we just talked about, is between the parentheses right after that if. Yeah? And the result is either true or false. So if the condition is true, then the body of code between the curly brackets, I can't really do curly brackets with my hands, curly brackets, that's the one that's going to execute, yeah? So if it's true, then your code is going to run that first block of code between those first two curly brackets, yeah? Else, so that means if the condition is false, if the condition is not met, then the body of code between the second pair of curly brackets will run. So if it's true, the first block of code between the curly brackets is going to run. If it's false, it's going to skip that, and the block of code between the second set of curly brackets is going to run. So take a second. What is the condition in this case? Think to yourself, what's the condition? Boom. The condition is that number has to be less than 10. That's the condition. Is the condition true or false? Take a second. Think to yourself. Is number less than 10? Yeah, it's true because the number is 5 and 5 is less than 10. So it's true. Now that we know it's true, which which block of code is going to execute? So we know it's true. Which one of these blocks of code is going to execute? I'm sorry, we don't have line numbers. But just think to yourself. Boom, the block of code between the first curly brackets. Yeah, it's true, right? We're going to execute that first block of code. So you can record these on your guided notes on a piece of paper. You can just think them in your brain, whatever helps you best to learn. So take a look at what's on the screen. You want to identify what's the condition and which code block is going to execute when we run this. So you can pause and then unpause when you're ready to move on. All right, we are ready to move on. So the condition here is that test score is greater than 90 because remember, the condition comes right after the if between those parentheses, yeah? And in order to understand which code block will execute, we have to understand if it's true or false. So the condition is that test score is greater than 90. Is 78 greater than 90? No, 78 is less than 90, which means this is false. So it's going to skip this. It's going to skip you earned an A, and it's going to move right to those second pair of curly brackets, else. Yeah? And it's going to run, there's room to grow. Nice. So conditional statements are not just used on numbers, right? We had 78 here, we had 5 and 10, yeah? Conditional statements can also be used on strings. Take a second and think for yourself, what is a string? Just make sure you remember. Yeah? So here we have let weather equal raining, and raining is a string. It's between those quotation marks, yeah? And the if statement says, if weather equals raining, then show the umbrella. Else, if weather equals anything else other than raining, then we're going to hide the umbrella. Yeah. So here are some of the operators that you're going to see. Again, you probably talked about these in math class. So here you can see in this column where it says JavaScript, how the operators that we'll be working with might differ from what you're used to in math class. So we have less than, we have greater than. These can sometimes be confusing. They're exactly the same as you're used to in your math class. We have less than or equal to. We don't have access to the mouth on top of the line. So instead, we just put them next to each other. We have less than or equal to. It's really hard with my hands. Or we have greater than or equal to. It's not working out. The biggest one to note is that equal to only when we're talking about conditionals, right? Not when we're talking about declaring variables, only when we're talking about conditionals. Equal to, you have to use 3 equal signs in a row. Equals, equals, equals. Yeah? In math class, we would always just use 1 equals, but when we're working with conditionals in JavaScript, we must use equals, equals, equals. Cool. And then not equal to is also different. We don't have access to the slash, so instead we use exclamation point, equals, equals. So instead of 3 equal signs to mean equal to, we do exclamation point, 2 equals, like, not equal to. That's what I remember. That exclamation point is like, just like that. Cool. So I'm going to show a few lines of code. You can write down on your own paper in your guided notes or just think in your brain whether the condition is true or false. Okay, so here we go. Is this condition true or false? You can pause and start again when you're ready to move to the next question. All right, we're ready to move on. Is the condition true or false? So we've said points is equal to 3, but then we set points equal to 4, so now points is equal to 4. And the condition is points has to be greater than 5. 4 is not greater than 5. So this condition is false. Again, you can pause the video until you're ready to move on. And we're back. Okay, so true or false, we have score equal to 100. And then we have if score is not equal to 100 is our condition. 100 is definitely equal to 100. So this condition is false. Yeah, nice job. Next, true or false. Pause the video till you're ready to move on. And we're back. Okay, let password equal code 2020. And then our condition is if password is equal to C0D32020. What do we think? True or false? Since it has to match exactly in order to be true, this would be false, right? Because C0D32020 is not the same as code 2020. This is false. Moving on. Is this condition true or false? Pause your video until you're ready to move on. And we're back. I hope if you're not pausing, you're really enjoying me switching from asking a question to being back. Okay, so in this question we have let language equal French, that string French, and then our condition is if language is equal to French. Something is wrong here. So instead of true or false, I think that this one's probably going to throw up an error because we did not close our quotation marks around our string of French. So it's definitely not going to be true, but I don't think it's even going to evaluate to false. It's going to give you an error. Nice. So we're going to jump into our guided practice now. Let me switch over to our guided practice. You'll be able to find this link in your Google Classroom. So what we want to do is write a conditional statement, just like we've been doing, that alerts password accepted if you put in the correct password, or else alerts incorrect password if you put in an incorrect password. Cool. And then there is an additional more practice option, but we're going to focus right now on just the task. Yeah. So if we look over here at our page, we have an input field for our password. It says password, please. And then we have an ID code field. So it's kind of like a username and password. Yeah. And then we have our submit button to submit the information. Yeah. So over here in our JavaScript, we see that we've declared a variable let password equal open sesame. So we know that the password is open sesame, and you'll see that the O is capitalized, there's a space, the S is capitalized, yeah? So it's gonna have to be exactly this in order for the user to get into their account. Not sure what this is an account for. You get to decide. Cool, so the things that are given to us, we already have our click function. Remember that's because nothing will happen until the user clicks that submit button. So on click, once the user clicks submit, we are declaring this variable password input, and we are saying password input equals whatever the user puts in this password input field. If you need a refresher on input.val, you can take a look at your previous slides or any of the previous work that you've done. But again, remember, let password input equal input.val says that password input is going to be equal to whatever the user puts in the password input field. Okay, so now we have to take a look at our task. Write a conditional statement that alerts password accepted if the user puts in the correct password. So let's start with that. So we have to start with if, right? We have our conditional statement. And then the condition has to go in here. So our condition is password input equals, and then I spelled password wrong, so it's really important. You have to spell all the things right or the computer won't know what you're talking about. So if password input equals, open sesame, right? And remember, it's a string, and we have to do all the capitalization correctly. Yeah, so we have to close our quotation marks. If password input equals open sesame, and then we need to open our curly brackets to say what will happen if that. So let's go ahead and close our curly brackets down here so we don't forget. So right now, our pop code has that green bar at the top. It means there aren't any errors. Yeah, so we've set this up correctly. So we have if password input is open sesame, yeah, then something. What does it say we want to happen? Alert password accepted. All right, so you can see we have an example down here on line 9. So we're going to do the same thing up here, except it's going to say alert. Remember, we have to have our quotation marks because it's a string. Password, I keep misspelling password, accepted. Great. And we need, look at my error. It says you need a semicolon at the end of this line. Yeah, now I'm all green, so we're good. So we have done the if portion of the statement. Now we need the other half. I'm gonna give you a second. What should go here? Just think that in your mind. What should go here? We have if, but then we need something else. That's it. So if they put in open sesame, great, we know exactly what to do. What happens if they put in something that's not open sesame? That's what we're gonna do now. So remember, oh, I already have my alert down in here, so let me back it up. Remember, we are closing our curly brackets as soon as we open them so that we don't forget. It's a really good practice. My pop code bar is green, so we have set up our conditional statement correctly. Our syntax is correct. So right now, just to recap, we have if the password input is open sesame, then we're going to alert password accepted. Otherwise, if you put in anything else, we're going to alert incorrect password. No, I didn't mean to do that. Great. So maybe we're done. Let's try it out. So my password, I'm going to put in the wrong password, and I'm going to put in conditionals. And then my ID code are just going to be my initials. Let's see what happens. Whoop! It knows it's incorrect. We did our else correctly. Okay, now let's check and make sure. Remember, you have to get the password exactly. So we have to capitalize the O and the S, and we have to put a space between. Let's see what happens. Ta-da! Password accepted. So great, we did it. If you have questions about any of this, obviously I'm just the magic of technology, but you can always leave questions and comments for your PMs, your volunteer, or you can take a look back at the slides and try to figure it out. But that is our guided practice for right now. Now that we've done that, we're going to move on to independent practice, yeah? So you're going to work on this on your own, but before you do, we're just going to quickly review the instructions. It looks like there are a lot of instructions. Just take it one piece at a time. I do encourage you to read each body of instructions before you go do it. The last time I did this, I only read number 1, and I thought I was just going to do the same thing for all the questions, and then I got them wrong. So you're doing something a little bit different for each of these questions here. So just be sure to read the instructions. I'm just going to recap the instructions really quickly. You can see we have this test here. It says second grade end of year test. Oh, these are cute questions. What's the abbreviation for Monday? I like that. For each of these questions, you're going to use conditionals to check if the answer is correct, just like we checked if the password was correct before. So still using conditionals, just a different kind of setting. Excuse me. And the click handlers are mostly set up except for the science question. So it will be up to you to kind of tackle this independent practice. Again, if you have questions, first thing you want to do is go back through the slides. You can go back through this very recording. You also have a reference table that you can use. And if you have questions about any of the things we covered previously, like input.val, setting up the click handler for section 4, you can always look back at previous slides, or you can look back at previous work that you yourself have done. So have fun tackling this independent practice, and you'll want to unpause the video when you're done so that we can finish up. So pause your video now. And we're back. Again, if you didn't pause the video, I hope you're really enjoying these transitions. Cool. So by now you should have done your independent practice. Remember that you need to give it a title. So you should be logged in. You should be saving your work. You need to give it a title. Copy the snapshot. Then you're going to open up Google Classroom if you're not already in there, and you'll find this specific assignment. Again, you should already be in there, so it shouldn't be too hard to find, but you're looking for 8.1. You're going to select Add, and you're going to add a link, and then you're going to paste in that link for the snapshot that you just took, and then turn it in. You should get a confirmation when you've turned it in. Cool. To close, what happens if the condition in a conditional statement is false? Take a second, think to yourself. You can pause if you need more time. If the condition in a conditional statement is false, then it runs the else body of code, right, between those else curly brackets. Yeah, awesome. So there is an exit ticket in your Google Classroom. You are going to come back. No, come back. Yeah. You're going to complete the conditional statement that you see on the screen. You want to check whether the user's input is equal to the secret number. It's just like we did all during class. You want to use the if statement and evaluate that against the secret number that you have up here and figure out if it's true or false. So you're just filling in the blanks to make that happen. So I'm going to leave this up here on the screen for the end of the video. You'll want to put this in your exit ticket and submit it, and we will see you in class. Thank you. Bye.